Hello everyone. I thought today I would just make a brief video talking about an important point that I think very often gets overlooked in discussions on religion. And that is the one phrase that I think is probably the most annoying phrase, the most annoying saying that people put forward. It's sort of like a quasi argument. It's not really an argument, but it's something people say when they think they're making a good point. Um, and it really gets under my skin. And it's when people say, you know, after you've gone through all these reasons why you believe in what you do as a Catholic or as a Christian, and then people say, well, you're just saying that because you're talking from a Catholic perspective. And then there's a part of me that just has this reaction. Like, yeah, like, I know I'm talking from a Catholic perspective. Like, I know what my own beliefs are. I know everyone is biased in the sense that everybody has a specific set of opinions. Everyone has a specific view on how the world works. Everyone has a specific view on how things are or how things should be. Everyone has a specific methodology or a specific uh like lens or context within which they make sense of reality. Everybody does. If you think you don't, then you're naive. The thing is, I think a lot of people tend to assume that people who have a high degree of certainty in their own opinions, those kind of people just they don't know that their opinions or that their viewpoint is coming from a specific perspective. They just automatically assume that everything they think, everything they believe, everything they say is correct. And that's not necessarily the case. We see this, for example, with little kids who just think that, reality gets, radio transmitted into their brain, and there's always a just one for one, you know, correspondence between what they perceive and the way things actually are. There's no possibility that their perceptions could be warped. There's no possibility that they could be wrong. Not everyone who has a high degree of certainty about their worldview has that attitude. Not everyone who has a high degree of certainty in their beliefs is coming at the debate or the discussion from the perspective of this sort of naive or close-minded, view on reality. Thing is, we are all coming from the perspective of a specific worldview. We're all entering into the debate with a very specific set of presuppositions. We're all entering into the discussion with a specific context or lens that helps us make sense of reality. And the fact of the matter is, that's not bad. And speaking about your beliefs in a very matter of fact sort of way is not bad. That just means that you have good reason, or you think you have good reasons to believe what you believe. And so, of course, I'm speaking from a Catholic perspective. I know I'm speaking from a Catholic perspective. I know that Catholicism is one of many worldviews, it's one of many ways of viewing reality. I know that. I know that other people approach the same topic with a different set of presuppositions, with a specific set of views, with a specific lens through which they view reality. The problem is whether or not you have good reasons to believe what you believe. And that's where we need to be open minded. We need to be open minded to the point to where we're willing to look at the evidence and we're willing to accept the evidence no matter what source it comes from and no matter where it leads. Nonetheless, it's not open minded to have no firm opinions on anything. It's not open minded to not take a stand on anything. It's not open minded to accept moral relativism. what constitutes open-mindedness is you're willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads. But you could look at a particular conclusion or a particular worldview and believe that it has a pretty decent level of support from the evidence and from the arguments. The level of certainty that you have in a worldview is based on the evidence and arguments in favor of it. And the more evidence and arguments exist in favor of a particular worldview, the greater your level of certainty is. And so when I speak from a Catholic perspective, and when I speak about my Catholic worldview, or judge things from a Catholic perspective or a Christian perspective, and do so with a high degree of certainty, with a sense of firmness and confidence, it's not because I'm unaware that there are other people with other opinions, and it's not because I don't think I have anything to learn from them. Rather, it's because I believe the evidence and arguments in favor of my worldview are pretty good. And the thing is, unfortunately, saying stuff like, oh, well, that's just what you believe in as a Catholic, or, yeah, well, according to the Catholic Church, or according to the Christian scriptures, that particular argument's not really an argument because it doesn't prove anything. All it proves is that one thing that everybody knows, that is, that we all have opinions, that we all look at reality from a specific perspective. It doesn't actually prove anything. It's just people who are uncomfortable with you having a high degree of confidence in your worldview trying to knock you down a peg. And that's also kind of a little bit annoying because, like, I find it annoying when people confuse confidence with arrogance, and arrogant people will do this. When you call them out on their arrogance, they will think that you're just being insecure. The opposite is also true. Just because you're confused about what the truth is, or just because you don't have that high of a degree of certainty or confidence about your worldview, don't get angry at people who do know the truth, or people who do have a high degree of certainty in their worldview. Now, certainty becomes a problem when you get to the point to where you're unwilling to listen to anyone else, where you think that you know everything, that you have nothing to learn from anyone else, and that's a problem. And I've actually written on this. In fact, one of my first academic articles uh, discussed in part this topic. You know, my first academic article was a response to Rowan Williams, and Rowan Williams is a famous Anglican theologian, and it was a response to his views as expressed in his text on Christian theology. And the the main purpose of the academic article was it was a reflection on um, the nature and scope of theology, and more specifically, studying that topic um, by having a Catholic analysis or critique of Williams. But in the first few sections of On Christian Theology, he talks a lot about this relationship between certainty and open-mindedness. And so this is something that I've thought a lot about. This is something that I've even written about. But the point is, a person can be open-minded without being wishy-washy. And likewise, a person can be firm in their opinions without being close-minded. And you maintain that balance by first and foremost realizing that open mindedness does not mean relativism. Open mindedness does not mean we all exist in our own little ideological bubbles. We all have our own beliefs, and we really all just kind of talk past each other, and we can never really convince each other because everyone's too set in their ways. But like I just let you do your thing, and I do my thing, and you know we all you know get along to go along, and or go along to get along rather. Um, and no one really criticizes each other, and my way of doing things and your way of doing things are just as valid. They're both equally valid. That's not open-mindedness. That's being wishy-washy. That's not having the courage of your convictions. Open-mindedness means accepting the evidence no matter what its source is. Open-mindedness means following the evidence to whatever conclusions it may lead to, and open-mindedness means being willing to admit that you're wrong if someone can provide a decent amount of arguments or evidence to the contrary, being willing to nuance or change your opinions in the light of new information. Likewise, being firm or confident in your beliefs means that if there's a high level of evidence in favor of your opinion, then that means that you have a high level of confidence in what you believe. But that doesn't mean ruling out the possibility that you could be wrong. That doesn't mean thinking that you have nothing to learn from anyone else. And learning how to make a distinction between these things and disposing yourself accordingly, emotionally and intellectually, will make the process of debating and having discussions a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable, and also a lot more fruitful. Because the entire purpose of debates and discussions is we work together to discern the truth. The entire purpose of having discussions or debates with people is fruitless if you accept this sort of wishy-washy view of reality, wherein reality is just sort of a bunch of individuals trying to make sense of the world, but there really is no, at least not beyond an empirical level, there's no objective truth on anything. If that's the case, then why bother talking about it? Because if there is no objective truth, then it's just me stating my opinions, you stating your opinions. But what's the point of me talking to you or you talking to me? You know? It's not like I could be objectively wrong and have something to learn from you. It's not like you could be wrong and have something to learn from me. And so the notion that there is objective truth and that objective truth can be known is what makes all conversations and discussions worthwhile. And the thing is, in the end of the day, there's another level on top of this. There's the level of faith, and faith is the mind being illumined by an intellectual light that goes beyond the senses and reason. It's the mind being illumined by certain truths that go beyond the capacity of reason to understand or the senses to understand, because it's truths of a supernatural or divine origin. But the thing is, faith is this supernatural illumination. And faith brings with it a higher level of certainty. Some people have a difficult time articulating the certainty of faith, but that's not because they don't have good reasons to believe what they believe, but because the certainty of faith goes beyond what reason can articulate. It goes beyond what the senses can articulate. And so, as a result, faith, because it has its source in something beyond the natural human capacity to know, brings with it a higher degree of certainty than what the senses or the intellect can bring. But in spite of that, there's still a difference between closed-mindedness and faith. Faith doesn't mean I know what I was taught as a Presbyterian, as a Catholic, as a Methodist, as a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm not going to listen to what anyone else says. I have a specific religion and a specific interpretation of that religion, and I'm not going to listen to anyone else who disagrees with me. That's not faith. Faith and the solitude of faith is something distinct from closed-mindedness. And the minute you begin to learn all of these distinctions, that's the moment in which we can actually start to have fruitful, worthwhile debates and discussions that actually lead us to a deeper understanding of the truth. So, with that in mind, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me today and have a wonderful day. God bless.